Sometimes, the breakdown is the blueprint. The chaos isn't punishment, it's a reset, a forced exit from the version of you that could never carry what's coming. You think your life fell apart, but it didn't. It fell open. And maybe you didn't ask for it. Maybe you begged for stability. Maybe you prayed that the pain would pass, and that what you built would stay standing. But the truth, it had to collapse because you were never meant to survive in that shell. You were meant to evolve. And evolution never comes from comfort. It comes from being shaken, stripped, and reintroduced to yourself with all the illusions burned away. So if you're standing in the ruins right now, if the job is gone, if the relationship dissolved, if the dream crumbled under pressure, I need you to hear this. You're not lost. You're being located. You're not broken. You're being rebuilt. This isn't the end. This is the floor, beneath the floor, the foundation the next version of you will rise from. Look through history, every titan, every great, every soul who rose to unimaginable heights, they were all leveled first. Carnegie was broke and fatherless at 13. Ford went bankrupt 5 times. Disney got fired for not being creative enough. Lincoln lost election after election. Hill was told he'd never make a living teaching invisible principles. But in every single case, the collapse came before the clarity. Because destruction is never random. It's surgical. And it cuts away what no longer serves the next phase of your becoming. But the mind doesn't like that. The ego wants certainty. It wants to cling to old titles, familiar faces, predictable paths. And when that gets stripped, you panic. You try to rebuild the old life, not realizing that what you're calling stability was really just a cage dressed as comfort. And the universe had the courage to do what you wouldn't. It tore it down, not to harm you, to free you. Because you can't rise if you're still anchored to what was. You want growth, you want to lead, you want to become, and then understand this. Sometimes life removes what you thought you needed, so you can find what you actually are. It closes the chapter you wouldn't end. It cuts ties you kept knotting. It burns bridges you were too afraid to walk away from. And yeah, it hurts. It hurts like hell. But the pain, that's the purge. It's your old identity dying. And identity doesn't go quietly. It screams. It fights. It tells you you're nothing without the things you lost. But that's a lie. You were always more than the job, more than the relationship, more than the image. And now you're being asked to prove it. Not to the world, to yourself. This is the test every builder faces. Will you use the rubble to rise, or will you sit in the ruins and call it fate? Because, listen to me, pain is a portal. But most people miss it. They numb, they run, they retreat into distractions, blaming, scrolling, waiting for the storm to pass so they can go back to who they were. But you didn't come this far to go back. You came to break through. So stop asking, why did this happen to me? Start asking what part of me needed to be dismantled so something greater could emerge. That question changes everything. It moves you from victim to visionary, from wounded to willing, from waiting to waking up. Because breakdowns are not the end of the road. They're the detour that leads to your real destination. And if you're brave enough to sit in the ashes long enough to breathe, to feel, to listen, you'll realize you didn't lose your life. You just lost the version that was too small for your destiny. You don't grow when things are easy. You grow when everything is stripped, and you're forced to build again, not from routine, but from truth. That's when the real you is born. That's when you stop performing and start becoming. That's when you shed the costume and finally speak with your own voice. It's raw, it's uncomfortable, but it's real. And real will take you further than polished ever could. So let the old fall, mourn it, respect it, but don't chase it. Don't beg for the shell back. Don't try to repack yourself into the version of life you've already outgrown. Because if it crumbled, it means it couldn't hold you anymore. And you were meant to expand. Your capacity is being stretched. Your calling is getting louder. Your clarity is coming, but only if you stop resisting the reset. Because what feels like falling apart is often falling into place. It doesn't look like it. It never does. It looks like failure. It looks like being behind. It looks like everyone else has it figured out, but me. But that's the illusion. The truth is, the ones who rise the highest are the ones who were forced to build from zero. Because when there's nothing left to lose, you gain something priceless. Fire. And fire doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't wonder if it's ready. It moves. It burns. It builds. And that's where you are now. The old you was burned off. So now you don't need to find yourself, you get to create yourself. Not from pressure, from power, not from fear, from fire. This is your forge, not your punishment, not your exile. This is the sacred, brutal, necessary place where all falsehoods are burned off, where everything artificial gets exposed, where comfort is stripped away and only what's real survives. And that's a gift, because what's real, that becomes your foundation. And the thing about a foundation is, it doesn't have to be flashy. It just has to be unshakable. So don't try to rebuild what cracked. Don't waste energy salvaging what was never meant to last. Start from below that. Start from your values, your fire, your principles, your non-negotiables. Not the ones they taught you to say, but the ones life is now daring you to live. Because when your old life falls apart, you find out real fast what you actually believe. When the titles are gone, when the plans collapse, when the lights go out, what's left? That's the truth of you, and that's where it begins. Not with applause, not with followers, not with perfect branding or beautiful strategies. It begins with one whisper: I am still here, still breathing, still standing, still building, even if all you have in your hands is a handful of ashes and a single decision: I won't go back. Because back is the version of you that tolerated mediocrity. Back is the mask you wore to make other people comfortable. Back is the plan that made sense on paper but never lit your soul on fire. You don't belong there anymore. And if it took the collapse of your routine, your relationships, your identity, then so be it. Let it collapse. Because peace isn't found in what you protect. It's found in what you're finally willing to let go. Let go of needing to be liked. Let go of proving yourself. Let go of the safety net that's really a noose. Let go of that version of success that was never yours to begin with. This is where your power comes back. Not in the rebuild, in the refusal to rebuild what doesn't serve you. You don't need to climb the same ladder. You don't need to win the game you no longer believe in. You get to design something different, but only if you stop looking back. Look forward, even when it's foggy, even when it's terrifying, even when the only thing you know is that the old road is gone. Because vision is born in uncertainty. It rises in the void. It's in the wilderness that you stop asking for directions and start writing your own map. You want clarity? Then walk anyway. You want strength? Then get uncomfortable. You want destiny? Then leave the safety of familiarity and step into the raw unknown. That's where life meets you. Not in the safety of what you planned, but in the stretch of who you're becoming. Because if it didn't stretch you, it couldn't shape you. And if it couldn't shape you, it couldn't carry your purpose. This is more than success. This is alignment. You didn't lose your path, you lost your distractions. You didn't lose your identity, you lost your costume. You didn't lose control, you lost the illusion that you ever had it. And in the wreckage of all that noise, you've found something no algorithm, no audience, no approval could give you. You, the unfiltered you, the unpolished you, the version of you that's been aching to come alive, if only you'd stop performing long enough to let it rise. So rise, Not with perfection, with presence. The most powerful version of you is not the one who looks like they have it all together. It's the one who's willing to rebuild with bare hands and burning eyes and say, I may not know what's next, but I know I'm no longer who I used to be. And that's enough. That is enough to change everything. Because momentum doesn't come from certainty. It comes from movement. And movement starts with a single defiant choice. I'm not going back to sleep. I'm building now. For real. From truth. With fire. That's the new chapter. No more trying to impress. No more seeking validation from a system that was never built for your brilliance. From now on, you don't chase. You create. You create the rhythm. You create the standards. You create the life that fits the new shape of who you are. And yes, it's harder. Yes, it's lonelier. Yes, you'll be misunderstood by everyone, still hypnotized by the performance of stability. But clarity is worth being misunderstood. Freedom is worth being uncomfortable. Purpose is worth being called crazy. Because when your old life falls apart, that's not the end. That's the audition. That's the beginning of who you really came here to be. You don't need a map when you become the compass. And that happens the moment you stop asking life to go back to what it was, and start demanding of yourself what it's now asking you to become. This isn't about comfort anymore. It's about calling. And calling rarely speaks in full sentences. It doesn't hand you blueprints or schedules. It whispers. And the whisper sounds a lot like this: keep going. Even if you don't know where you're headed, just don't go back. Because the life you're capable of, it's not behind you. It's on the other side of discipline, the other side of vision, the other side of clarity, born through chaos. That's why it had to fall apart, because you never would have chosen the necessary discomfort on your own. You would have stayed too long, tolerated too much, believed in the version of yourself that played it safe instead of rising. So life made the move for you. It closed the door. It shattered the frame. It buried the path and said, now build a new one that fits the truth of who you're becoming. The rebuild isn't about revenge. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving one thing: that you're not afraid of the blank page anymore, that you're not scared of starting over without applause, that you've stopped needing certainty to move. Because the people who truly rise, the ones you read about, talk about, admire, they all mastered the same thing. They learned to lead in the dark. No map, no safety net. Just a decision that the next version of themselves was worth building, even if no one clapped. Yet. And that's where you are now. It's dark. You don't know what's next. But you're still breathing. You're still here. And more than that, you're aware. Do you realize how powerful that is? Most people never get here. They get distracted. They get bitter. They get stuck scrolling through someone else's life while their own rots in the background. But not you. Not anymore. Because when your old life crumbled, you didn't numb it. You felt it. You faced it. And now you're using it. That pain you felt, that silence, that moment where everything inside you screamed, I don't know who I am anymore. That was the moment your real self started speaking for the first time in years. No masks, no performances, just you, raw, cracked open, and finally ready. Ready to stop being busy and start being aligned. Ready to stop pretending you're okay and start building something that actually makes you feel alive. Ready to stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand your path. Because not everyone gets to see the new you. And they shouldn't. This is sacred. The person you're becoming doesn't owe explanations. They owe results. Results that come from long, silent hours of self-mastery. From choosing standards over stories. From waking up not for applause, but for alignment. That's the real rebuild. And it doesn't start with doing. It starts with being. With deciding who you are before the results, before the money, before the impact. You show up today like the version of you who already has the results. And then you earn them through discipline. Because that's the paradox no one wants to talk about. You don't rise by watching. You rise by walking even when the floor's still forming under your feet. And you do it in silence. No announcement. No hype. Just repetition. Because the next level version of you, they're not built in moments of intensity. They're built in moments of consistency. The wake-ups when you didn't feel like it. The reps when you were tired. The deep work when no one was clapping. The days you didn't see progress, but you still refused to break your word. That's what makes you unrecognizable later. Because there's a moment, not far from now, when you'll look in the mirror and see someone who doesn't flinch anymore. Someone who isn't moved by mood swings, market dips, or mediocre opinions. Someone who walks like they know where they're going because they built the road with their own hands. And no one can take that from you. They can take the title. They can take the platform. They can strip away the applause and the comfort and the tools. But they can't take the internal structure that was forged in fire. That's yours. And that structure, it came from collapse. So stop resenting the pain. Stop resenting the loss. Stop trying to glue the old life back together. You're not broken. You're just not finished yet. Because your story wasn't meant to be tidy. It was meant to be transformational. Messy, raw, real, but undeniable. The kind of story people tell in rooms you haven't even stepped into yet. This is the part where legacy is born. Not when you make it. Not when you finally get the credit. But right here, when no one's watching and everything still hurts and you show up anyway. That's the beginning of power. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't beg for attention. It commands it just by existing. Because people can feel when you've been through something. When you've had everything stripped away and still kept building. When life tried to silence you and you decided to get even louder, not with words, but with execution. That's when you stop being relatable and start being magnetic. Because there's something different about a person who's been tested. A person who's lost, grieved, collapsed, but didn't stay down. Who didn't post about it. Didn't cry for attention. Didn't beg the world to understand. They just rebuilt. They just worked. They just decided that the fire inside was more important than the opinions outside. That's the version of you that's rising right now. Don't underestimate this season. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's small. Just because it's lonely doesn't mean it's empty. This is where your roots are going deep. This is where your next level is learning how to stand in the storm. Because every legacy needs a storm. There is no oak tree without pressure. There is no steel without fire. There is no greatness without seasons of complete obscurity. So if no one sees you right now, good. That means you're exactly where transformation happens. Let the world wonder. Let them scroll past. Let them think you're quiet, distracted, lost. They don't know what you're doing, and they don't need to. This isn't a broadcast. This is war. An internal war between who you were and who you're about to become. And in that war, you have to let the old version die completely. Without ceremony. Without comfort, without delay. Because the longer you try to drag the old you into the new season, the longer you delay everything you were born to build. So cut the cords, delete the apps, silence the noise, and most of all, stop explaining yourself. Your future does not need your past's approval. And the people who were part of your collapse, they're not qualified to shape your comeback. You're not here to repeat. You're here to reinvent, from the ground up, from the ashes out. And it starts with taking full ownership of your future. Tour 24. That means no more blaming, no more waiting, no more when it's easier. You don't need easier. You need truth. You need to sit in the discomfort of the current season until you start speaking differently, thinking differently, moving differently. You don't wait for clarity. You create clarity by showing up without it. You don't wait for belief. You build belief by keeping promises to yourself when no one is watching. That's the code now. This is the system. Every day you wake up and ask, what does the future version of me demand from me right now? And then you give it. Not when you feel like it, not when someone validates it. You give it because that's who you are now. Identity anchored in action, not mood, not reaction, just commitment. And that commitment compounds. It rewires your nervous system. It reshapes your thinking. It realigns your life. Because structure isn't restrictive. It's freedom in disguise. You want peace, then you need discipline. Because without discipline, every part of your life stays noisy. You keep negotiating with chaos. You keep tolerating things that fracture your focus. You keep betraying the future every time you scroll back into the past. Discipline is not punishment. It's alignment. It's building walls around what matters so that nothing gets in and nothing leaks out. Your energy is sacred now. Your focus is a vault. And the people who don't respect that, they don't get access. Period. Because here's the truth. Not everyone will come with you, and they're not supposed to. This version of you, they require standards, and standards are expensive. They cost you your excuses. They cost you your people-pleasing. They cost you your addiction to comfort and convenience. But in return, they give you yourself. The version of you that no longer seeks escape. The version of you that no longer apologizes for your fire. The version of you that no longer chases opportunity because you've become the kind of person who attracts it. And when you get here, when the dust settles and the rebuild is real, you'll feel it. Not relief, not celebration. You'll feel certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from surviving your own storm. The kind of certainty that doesn't need validation to speak, doesn't need praise to perform, doesn't need noise to know its worth. You'll walk differently. You'll breathe differently. You'll operate with a calm that only comes from doing what most never do. Staying in the fire long enough to be transformed by it. And no one can teach that. No book. No mentor. No course. Only pain. Only pressure. Only sauce discovered through collapse. That's why it had to fall apart first. Because if it hadn't, you would have kept settling for a life that didn't fit your soul. You would have kept playing the role they handed you. You would have kept asking for permission to be powerful. But not anymore. Now you know. You never needed permission. You needed the pain to wake you up. And now you build. Now you build. Not from fear, not from lack. Not to prove them wrong. You build because this time it's for you. Because this time, it's built on truth, not performance. On alignment, not approval. And when you build from truth, you stop chasing finish lines that don't matter. You stop climbing ladders that lead nowhere. You stop trying to be everything to everyone and start becoming exactly who you were born to be. This is the beginning of focus. Not surface-level focus, not the kind you force for 10 minutes before the next distraction. I'm talking about deep focus, the kind that clears rooms, the kind that says no, not because you're rude, but because your future is too expensive to entertain cheap distractions. And you'll feel it, the shift. When your old habits try to sneak back in. When the old voice says, just once won't hurt. When comfort tries to crawl into your routine like it never left. And this time, you'll look it dead in the face and say, I don't negotiate with what I've outgrown. Because you have. You've outgrown the version of you who needed to be rescued, who needed motivation to move, who needed someone to tell them what they were worth. You've remembered what most people forget, that discipline is self-respect in action. And when you build with self-respect, you don't rush. You don't need applause. You don't care about what it looks like to anyone else because you've tasted what it feels like to live out of alignment. And you've made a vow, never again. Never again will you shrink for approval. Never again will you chase peace through people. Never again will you beg life to give you what you now know how to build. And what you're building now, it's not just a career, it's not just a new routine, it's a new identity. The kind that isn't shaken by storms because it was shaped inside one. And that kind of identity, it has gravity. It pulls things toward it, not because it's flashy, but because it's real, because it's earned. And the world doesn't resist that kind of energy, it rearranges itself around it. So if you're still wondering why your old life had to fall apart, remember this? Because your new life demanded a version of you that the old life never would have built. You can't carry purpose with weak foundations. You can't hold greatness with shaky hands. You can't birth legacy with shallow roots. It had to fall apart, so you could finally build something that won't. Something built in silence. Something built in intention. Something so grounded in principle that trends can't move it, fear can't touch it, and time can't erase it. That's the blueprint now. No more chasing. No more waiting. No more reaching for versions of yourself that were designed to keep others comfortable. This is your evolution, and it's not supposed to look like anyone else's. That's the beauty of collapse. It wipes the slate clean. And for the first time, you get to draw your own lines. No more proving. Now it's about producing. Producing depth. Producing clarity. Producing work that echoes beyond your own life. Because there's something bigger at play here. And once you feel it, you stop operating on random. You start waking up with fire, not because life is easy, but because you're finally aligned with something that matters. And when you're aligned, you move different. You don't need to convince yourself anymore. You already decided. And now your actions are just proof of that decision. That's the shift. From guessing to knowing. From talking to building. From needing to embodying. You are the architect now, the creator, the builder of rhythm, not a reactor to circumstance. And sure, the world may not clap at first. Let them scroll, let them sleep, let them question. Because by the time they wake up, you won't need to announce your transformation. It'll be undeniable. They'll feel it in your presence. They'll see it in your eyes. They'll hear it in your silence. Because true builders don't brag. They build. And when it's built, there's nothing left to prove, only something to protect. So protect it. Protect the new you. Protect the standards. Protect the system. Protect the peace you fought in silence to earn, because this wasn't handed to you. It was carved out of collapse. It was birthed in the ruins. And it's yours because you refused to quit when everything told you to stop. This is what greatness looks like in its earliest form. Discipline without applause. Vision without validation. Focus without followers. But you don't need them, because you didn't come here to be popular. You came here to be powerful, to live without permission, to move without fear, to lead from fire, not from formula. And if that means walking alone for a season, so be it. Because you've seen what's possible when you betray yourself. Now it's time to find out what's possible when you don't. Now look at you, still standing, still breathing, still building. And for the first time in a long time, you're not surviving. You're becoming. Not who they said you were, not who you tried to be, but who you were always meant to be underneath it all. The fire, the focus, the discipline, the clarity. It was always there, but it needed space to rise, and the collapse, that was the space. The old life, the one that fell apart, wasn't failure. It was a cocoon, tight, dark, suffocating at times, but necessary. Because no butterfly flies without the pressure of transformation. And no warrior is born without first being stripped of all illusions. That's you now. You've been stripped of ego, of excuses, of the false narratives you clung to just to feel safe. And in their place, a weapon, a mind that doesn't flinch, a spirit that doesn't bend, a voice that no longer asks for permission to speak, because you've earned it. You didn't skip the work. You didn't fake the healing. You sat in the ashes until your identity burned through the story. That's why you walk different now, why your silence speaks louder than your old noise ever could, why you don't care if they get it because you finally do. You understand why it had to happen, why the door had to slam, why the relationships had to end, why the breakdown had to come like a storm in the night with no warning, because anything less would have been too gentle. And gentle doesn't wake giants. You were asleep, but not anymore. Now your eyes are open. Now your back is straight. Now your steps are chosen, not reactive. And the most powerful thing, you don't need a title. You don't need the old systems to recognize you. You've outgrown all of them. You've become your own source, your own rhythm, your own standard. And the world, it's adjusting to you now. They'll try to pull you back to the version of you they're comfortable with, the version who second-guessed, who played small, who smiled politely while slowly disappearing inside. But that version is gone, buried in the rubble of a life you no longer belong to. So don't resurrect it. Don't revive it. Don't reattach yourself to anything that made you question your own value. You didn't come this far to make peace with your past. You came to build from it, brick by brick, day by day, with conviction, with silence, with intensity. They won't understand and don't need to, because builders don't explain. They execute, and now your execution becomes your testimony. Not your tears, not your story, not your pain, your progress. That's how you honor the version of you who almost gave up, by refusing to shrink, by refusing to settle, by waking up every day and building the life that version dreamed of in silence. This isn't just about you anymore. This is about everyone who's watching silently, the ones who are struggling to breathe under the weight of their own collapse, the ones who are where you were. You're not just building a future, you're building a path, a standard, a legacy, a fire bright enough to light the way for those still stuck in the dark. And it starts with you continuing when it's not easy, when no one sees, when it still feels like you're walking alone. That's where your power multiplies. In the days that feel like nothing, but build everything. So don't rush. You're not behind, you're right on time. Because the pace of alignment is never frantic. It's deliberate, it's relentless, it's calm under pressure. And when you walk like that with intention, with presence, with fire, you don't need to force doors open. They open for you, because now you don't just carry potential, you carry proof. Proof that collapse is not the end. Proof that clarity can be born from chaos. Proof that when life takes everything, you can still build something unstoppable. So let them ask, let them wonder, let them say, "Where have you been?" You just smile, not because you owe them an answer, but because you know they're about to see one. In your focus, in your consistency, in the quiet power of a person who used to chase things, but now attracts them just by being who they are. Because you didn't just survive the collapse. You used it. You turned it into clarity, into fuel, into identity, into legacy. And now you walk, not with questions, with conviction. Not hoping life will work out, but knowing that you will make it work. Because what fell apart was never your future. It was just the scaffolding holding your greatness hostage. And now that it's gone, you're finally free to rise. This is your life now, not borrowed, not broken, but rebuilt, on truth, on fire, on purpose. And it all started when your old life fell apart first.